And today marks 1 full year since the Russian special military operation in Ukraine began, and first reminds that it could last for another. Initially, Russian President Vladimir Putin had planned to take control of the country in only a matter of days. However, the vast amount of fighting and resistance has sustained his plan indefinitely. The spark of the special military has countries all around the world to speak out, send support, and stand in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. And just as they speak out, those countries that are helping Ukraine also sanction Russia in many ways. Today with us is the political analyst Libre Sankara. Welcome to From the South.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start. 1 year ago, when the conflict broke out, Western countries imposed sanctions on Russia in hopes of shocking its economy. However, the high inflation, fuel shortages, and food supply disruptions are starting in the US and the European Union, and prompting protests demanding payments that cope with a high cost of living, all of that just 1 year after the conflict. So, how have smaller economies changed after this? What is the perspective for these small economies?
The goal of sanctions on Russia and the goal of the U.S. in general is to continue to starve the people and to punish countries that don't agree with the U.S.'s policies. And so the sanctions against Russia are also a double standard. Who is the U.S. government to talk about democracy and to talk about de-escalation when Russia was trying to have peace talks with the Ukraine before the U.S. agreed to send U.S. military aid, denying the people of the U.S. Basic needs, right? We're in a pandemic. There's a lack of affordable housing. People are asking for relief. And so sanctions on Russia is essentially using Russia as a scapegoat, and other smaller countries like Cuba and Nicaragua as well. Sanctions are hybrid warfare, and Russia is one of the latest victims of the U.S. hybrid warfare against the global move towards multipolarism, which the U.S. is scared of because it doesn't put the U.S. in a position of power. It puts other developing countries in positions to change the world and to improve the conditions in their countries in a way that does not benefit U.S. imperialism.
Yeah, and one question that is kind of important is, since the conflict started, Ukraine has received around $68,000 billion only from the United States in 2022. Not talk about the current year, 2023. So this year that has increased and is expected to increase even more the money that the U.S. is sending to Ukraine as aid. How could the Ukrainian state pay all the borrowed money knowing that it's a huge quantity?
I think if we simply look at history, we can see that this is the way that the U.S. functions. They put countries in debt, right? Zelensky is asking every country to send support to the Ukrainian people because they are against Russia, and the U.S. has had a war on Russia since the 19th century. And so all this money that the U.S. government is finding to fund this war, it speaks to many issues in the U.S. We should not be sending billions of dollars to the Ukraine when, again, people in the U.S. are finding it hard to find accessibility for food, accessibility for housing, get access to education. So the U.S. government is ignoring working class people in the U.S. and instead funding a proxy war against Russia, and also their manufacturing consent from the general U.S. public. There has always been Russophobia and this fear of big bad Russia for people in the U.S. when the reality is that Russia is not our enemy. It's not Russia who who stopped us from being able to address COVID-19. It's not Russia that is raising the price of rent in the U.S. It's not Russia that is killing people using their police. That is the U.S. government. The U.S. We have to be very clear in the U.S. that our main enemy is the U.S. government, because it is the U.S. government's responsibility to take care of its citizens. And instead of doing that, it is going to other countries and creating war. It is sending military aid when it could be providing much needed things for working class people in the U.S. And that's why next month, on the 20th anniversary of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, Diaspora Palante Collective, Answer Coalition, Code Pink, the People's Forum are going to host a Peace in Ukraine rally because we need an anti-war movement in the U.S. There are far better things that we could be doing with our money. And we also know that the U.S., again, is going to use this debt against Ukraine after Zelensky is gone, because Zelensky is not going to stay in power. The U.S. is going to try to manipulate that debt to keep Ukraine crippled. And why does this benefit the U.S.? Because we have to keep in mind, Ukraine in Europe has some of the most arable land, some of the most accessible access to resources, and that is something that the U.S. wants access to. Yeah. And also, go ahead, sorry.
No, I'm agreeing with you. That's really true, because there's something that the U.S. is ignoring for their own people, giving their own money to other country in a conflict that is not there actually. So because they are giving their own money to other things and not their own problems. Is that they have a lot of people unemployed. They had a lot of people that is homeless. They have a lot of homeless. They can do something better. But it's true that the Ukrainian lands have something that could pay that debt. Because the U.S. wanted. It's not for free, this help that they are given. And the last question for this is, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky declared that a victory is inevitable when you have NATO and the European Union on your side. But Ukraine has not won yet. Having those allies has not won already with that many armies and with that many equipment, because it's not a lie that worldwide Ukraine was helped, but Russia is on itself. It's alone in this fight. How do you think, or how could Ukraine change this lag for this special military operation? How could it do it? How could it change the situation here, their position? And has Russia achieved this Nazification? They did it, or they have done that, Nazification?
So, in terms of denazification, we have to keep a few things in mind, and for people to have a little bit of understanding. A few days ago, something happened in the Ukraine that was not happening prior to 2014, when the U.S. helped to fund the coup of a democratically elected government in the Ukraine. And that is that they celebrated an individual by the name of Stefan Banderas. This is an individual that helped to spread the Nazification and helped to kind of amplify this increased love for Nazification and white supremacy in the Ukraine specifically. Now he is being viewed as a national hero, and that is something that is very, very dangerous, because what we see happening in the Ukraine now is that there are people between white supremacy and Nazism that it is becoming more socially acceptable to have these ideologies, and then those people are being armed to help to fight in this proxy war that the U.S. is helping to fund. And so what we have happening in the Ukraine is that we see the Azaz battalion, which is which up until last year was considered a terrorist organization by the US government. It was taken off of that list, but it's considered a terrorist organization because they wear swastikas. They are openly fans of Hitler, and they openly support Nazism. And these are individuals that are now getting funding from the US government, that are getting support from the Ukrainian government to continue to fight. And this is horrible because, again, the US is trying to make it seem as if Russia is the bad person. But when NATO continues to expand and continues to block Russia in and make strategic partnerships with countries all around Russia, of course Russia is going to respond. And so Russia has already tried to have peace talks, and we need to continue to paint that narrative. In this instance, Russia is not our enemy, and we have to stop funding military aid to the Ukraine so that we can create the conditions for peace talks, which is necessary. We need to end all U.S. wars.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being with us in this interview.